Good evening and welcome to the October 4th Traffic and Safety Board meeting. Meeting is called to order. Roll call. Stoker.
Here.
Hang.
Here.
Maureen Moore.
Here.
Sam Moore.
Here.
Chief Anderson.
Here.
Coda here. Next on the agenda is introductions of guests. Any guests in the audience, please come up to the microphone and state your name and, if applicable, your address.
Pat Cawley with Transportation Improvement Association.
Me too.
Yes, please.
Name's Matt Cook. I live at 406 Fisher Court.
Oh.
Thank you, Matt. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes from September 6, 2018 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from September 6, 2018.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor of approving minutes of September 6, 2018 say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion has passed. Next on the agenda is old business. Item A is engine braking.
Yeah, to the board, I can report that I passed forward the recommendation of council, as well as I gave you a copy of the report that I sent to council, as well as Mr. Kingsup and Mr. Pollack, regarding the recommendations of this board to have an ordinance, to recommend an ordinance be adopted for engine braking. And I also sent along a couple of copies of sample ordinances that I had found on it. And Mr. Kingsup is still working on wordsmithing an ordinance. So I just wanted to let you know that's the location that it's at right now. So
Okay, so it is in the lap of the,
it's in the
Council.
lap of the council as well as Mr. Kingsup. So I've got the report. I got all the documents, including Sam's letter from the board expressing it to the council. So waiting to hear on that. So that's all I have to report right now.
Any other discussions on engine braking? Okay, next on the agenda is, under old business, is Charlevoix and Maine.
I just wanted to report to the board that Pat Cawley has been working on taking numbers down there. They had a malfunction with one of the lines, I believe. Is that correct, Pat? And they had to do a recount of some sort.
Hey, Pat, could you explain just a little bit for us people who don't understand this terminology just yet about loops? And what we were talking about at our last meeting is that the loop there is connected to the loop in 14 Mile Road. What exactly does that mean? And
Yeah, I was going to follow up on what Harry had said. We counted all 4 approaches, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. We had one of the counters failed on Wolper. We put it back out there this week, picked it up today. It collected data for about 12 hours and failed again, so we'll probably have to go out there again and get some data. But the numbers look pretty low, which is what we thought when we observed it.
so this would be cars going across a strip or something like that?
Yeah, it's just a pneumatic hose that goes out there. It's, the box got an air switch, so it counts each time somebody drives over the hose and counts it. As far as loops, if you're talking about detection, I'm not sure if they have in-pavement loops or cameras there. Sometimes they use cameras and it uses video image sensing software to tell whether there's a car that went through there. Or the other older fashioned way of doing it is to put, a circle of wire into the pavement, creates a magnetic field, and then you can detect a vehicle by the change in the magnetic field. I think what's out there is loops, and what they have there, as long as you have detection for all approaches, you could let that intersection run free, do whatever it needs to do just to accommodate traffic at the intersection. If that side street traffic on Wolper and Charlevoix is pretty light, it's just going to stay green for Main Street most of the time. if you did that and let it run, I mean, then what the advantage would be is when somebody comes up pedestrian and pushes the button, that's the same as activating the loop. It's gonna cycle through then and then give them a walk signal to cross.
Okay,
So the thought is if you do that and there's not a lot of side street traffic and you just let it run free, there's not gonna be a lot of impact. You won't be able to coordinate it anymore with 14 Mile because it's gonna be doing its own thing. It's just gonna
so,
respond to traffic there.
okay, so that's if we separate it from 14 Mile. In other words, somehow it's connected to 14 Mile Road's intersection traffic. And if we separate that, then we could allow it to sort of run its own course. Essentially, is that, am
Yeah.
I getting that right?
Yep,
And-
exactly.
Okay.
I mean, if they're set up so they're coordinated, you know, when it turns green at 14 Mile, if you're, say, driving southbound, it's gonna calculate a time it'll take you to get there. It should turn green, you know, right when you arrive, so you can progress through both intersections.
Okay,
That's the way it was explained to me, was that it's connected to 14 Mile Road
Yes.
and Main Street is connected to that light. That's the way Mr. Drinkwine had reported it to me.
okay. So here's the more difficult question. If it is connected to 14 Mile Road, then the study and the things that you reported on just recently about a study at 14 Mile Road with the DDA, does any changing at 14 Mile Road have an effect on what we're doing at Wolper and Charlevoix?
It potentially could if you implemented, you know, some sort of pedestrian phasing at 14 Mile. What you'd probably end up with is a longer cycle length. In order to keep them in progression, they have to run on the same cycle length or a, you know, number that's divisible by it. So say if it's running 100 seconds at 14 Mile, it has to run 100 seconds at Charlevoix and Wolper, or perhaps 50 seconds if you can fit everything into 50 seconds. But the impact would be maybe you have to run 120 seconds after you do the pedestrian phasing. You'd then have to carry that on down to the next intersection.
So we're trying to figure out how to improve the pedestrian crossing at Charlevoix. And we talked about the fact that the buttons don't work, or they're not there even. I'm not sure now where we are with that, but
What it is the buttons are there, the buttons work, but the buttons don't work when it's flashing.
when it's flashing.
Right.
Okay, so we want to have the buttons working more often. Is that correct? Is that
Well, that we want to have the buttons working when someone pushes the button.
when they push them? I guess that's right. You're right.
The talk and what I think the direction that we were going to and what council kind of directed us was to try to come up with a good strategy to we seem to have endless complaints here. It's either pedestrians that are complaining or motorists that are complaining.
both.
It's both of them. Both of them are
both,
complaining. If you do one for the other, then you get a complaint. And then right now, we've got a light that is doing nothing but flashing for most of the time, where if we have a busier pedestrian crossing down there, that we have pedestrians that want to use the light to cross, and they're getting frustrated because the light's just in a flashing mode, and it's not helping them cross the street.
So, Pat, if we put the light you were talking about, which would be green most of the time when it wasn't busy, and we had the buttons that worked, that when they pushed the button, then they would these people would stop and they could cross. And would that solve the problem that we're?
I think it would solve the complaints that you're getting, because if you let that run free, it's gonna do two things. A, it's gonna be more responsive to pedestrians pushing the button. That should come up, you know, almost instantaneous. It's just gonna have to run, you know, a short yellow and an all red for Main Street traffic and then allow them to cross. But it also could do that for vehicles on the side street. I think that was, you know, the original complaint was you're sitting on the side street for a long time.
Right.
Again, because it's running that long cycle length so that it can stay coordinated with 14 Mile. So if you run those in isolation, it can do its own thing down there. The only drawback, like I say, is the progression. You're not going to get the progression anymore. I mean, you will when nobody's there, but it could take it out of step.
And it could take it out of step during possibly busy times, during peak hours, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It should
Yeah.
cause more backup than of cars. So that would be, that's the balance I think we got to get here, is to find out, do you want cars backing up even further into 14 in Main instead of moving freely down southbound on Main?
Okay, so what we're looking for is maybe the independence issue, because that helps us.
Well-
However, if
The-
we do that, there's a conflict then with 14 Mile Road, which doesn't help the DDA at all, apparently, because it's going to back traffic up maybe a lot, actually, quite a bit.
Depending on, that's why we thought it was important to get these counts on these cars. How many cars are we talking about here that are on the side streets that are there actually using that? But then I guess, even with those counts, if you change it, you may have a different count, because people start coming and
That's right.
using it.
That's true.
It would be something that would probably have to, if it was implemented, a follow-up count would probably have to go and see, if you were experiencing problems. That's why, that's the dilemma there. That's where it's kind of the devil's in the details here, as far as which way you're going to go and how's the traffic going to go.
Okay, so we weren't able to get an accurate count yet.
Well, as far as the Charlevoix leg, we got an accurate count. It had a maximum of 20 vehicles an hour approaching in the peak hour. Most of the time, it's pretty low. You're only getting a couple vehicles
yeah.
per hour. I also went out there this afternoon to catch school time to see if any pedestrians were crossing. So I sat there, from 5 after till 3:30, and I didn't see anybody. And then as I was pulling out, I did see 2 kids crossing on bike, which I assume were coming from the elementary school. But that's all I saw out there.
Okay, so are there any other solutions to this thing right now, or no?
Well, the other thing we talked about, instead of running it free, maybe you run it, a longer time frame than it is now. That again will give you, more time when the pedestrian button will be active. What that time frame is
Yeah, right
what
now,
we
I
didn't
want to say
know.
it's like 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at peak time is when it is. 'Cause
When
for-
it's
in the
actually
morning,
operating?
When it's operating, it's on the timer right now.
Say
for that.
say if someone's trying to cross, since it's flashing red right now, if someone's trying to cross Main Street right now, try to press the pedestrian button, it won't work.
It won't work.
Yeah.
If it's in, once it goes to, when you're timing it and you take it to flashing mode, the buttons don't work. But then once it's in the cycle mode, the buttons will work for the pedestrians to,
Yep.
so there's no way of making it so that you can push the button and it comes out of flashing mode for a pedestrian, is the way it's been explained to me.
Yeah, so we can't do that.
Right.
That's just a no-no, okay.
I guess the other thing I was just thinking about too is what you could do is if it became an issue during, PM peak hour, you could run it in coordination during that time only, if it was critical to get, traffic through 14 and that intersection.
So essentially, you could phase it during peak hours to match with 14, say AM or PM peak hours, and in the middle of the day, kind of run independently.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
know it had
and-
that option too, so.
Yeah, I think
good
part of it too, when this problem first cropped up a few years ago, one of the loops was defective. So if your loop is out, what it actually does then is just runs a pre-timed cycle. So the side street will come up, every cycle, whether somebody's there or not.
Would it be better to have, instead of having a loop in the concrete, would it be better to have maybe the cameras that monitor the traffic? Is that might that be a better choice?
Well, it's better from the standpoint of, the bad pavement conditions you have in Michigan and the winters, because you get the heave in the pavement breaks the wires. That's why they don't they don't last. But certainly the camera has more expense to it, and they, they have some of their own issues too where they fail. So.
You know what, it's kind of amazing that we have, it seems like we have a lot more complaints than we actually have traffic.
Right.
It does seem like
And it's like, well, how does that happen? It's a question to ponder, I guess, but.
I think it's just a matter of expectations that people are expecting, to get an instant response from the signal, and that's not what you're seeing. So.
Well, that sounds like a good option if they found out it was backing up 14 Mile, that we could.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you could do that, so that is an option.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, but then we need the loop to work.
Well, I'm not
Did it ever
I'm not
get
sure that the
fixed?
loop doesn't work, because I haven't had any complaints that it's not working, because it's still functioning in a light mode that it's counting on the loop.
Okay.
And we haven't seen that malfunctioning, so whatever the deal is, I don't think it's currently broken. It would be something that we could investigate to see, but
Yeah, I believe it was operating when we were out there in
Yeah.
the field with RCOC.
Okay, so then what is our next step then, if we,
well, my thought is to wait until we get the report from Pat with his suggestions, and then come forward and talk it out and see what kind of suggestions we want to make to council, and then I'll report back to council on what this group has seen. The council wanted me to bring this to this group.
Right.
To kind of feel it through, do some research, and talk to some people, and come up with a recommendation from this group on the way we can move forward.
Okay.
And anyway, I mean, the way I look at it is that everything could be on a trial basis too. If something doesn't look like it's working right, we can always go back to this way, but maybe this way we could, get it so that the light can be used a little more by more people. It just seems silly to me to have such an expensive piece of equipment down there that you're not using.
Yeah.
It's just sitting in a flashing mode for most of the day and night.
Yep.
And a light is very effective for letting people cross there. And now with the new configuration of, the bicyclists coming up from Royal Oak, you may have a more pedestrian packed downtown area. I don't know.
Yeah. Good.
okay, so we shall wait to hear from Pat.
Okay, any other discussion on Charlevoix and Main Street? Next on the agenda,
Would you like me to make a motion on that?
We don't need to make a motion. We're just going to wait for his report. Do we need a motion?
do we need a
Well-
motion to,
I think we should,
It's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. I brought it up because I wanted to keep the group posted on what was going on with it. So that's why I wanted, and with our discussion, I was going to keep these things in old business so that they're not forgotten about, so that I can keep giving you updates anyhow. So our last motion that we had was that we were going to have Pat do a study and get back to this group. We haven't gotten that far yet.
Right.
okay, so that would just carry over.
hasn't been completed
Carrying
yet,
on,
so
we're
we'll carry it
waiting,
over.
but
Okay.
I wanted to
Alright.
do it as an update
Okay.
in old business so that we're keeping it moving, so that it's not going by the wayside.
My lip is buttoned.
Okay, next under old business is C, special need signs.
Yeah, I just wanted to report to the group that I gave you copies of. That's the revised special needs sign policy dealing with blind person in area and such, that we went forward and got approved by council. There was a few things that I changed from the last time, and it came from suggestions of things that the council thought that we should do. The first one was in number 4 in criteria. It identified that the special needs sign file will be maintained at the police department. I didn't specify it in the original one who was keeping that file, to make sure that ones that aren't needed anymore can be reevaluated. And then there was also in the policy, I had 3 to 5 years, which is what we had suggested. But then the council expressed a concern with what happens if somebody moves and such. So I put it in the policy that it would be reviewed every year. That way, that would cover if somebody moved. And it could be just to make sure that that sign is still needed. They wanted, the council was concerned that it was still needed, and we kept a close eye on whether it's needed, so,
Makes sense.
okay.
I guess my only comment on that would be that, and you haven't specified who's going to be the keeper of the records, but
In
We ju- we just wa-
the policy, I said the chief of police or his designee.
Okay.
That's what I said.
so my only question would be is that you're not setting yourself up for that's a lot of maintenance work. If you have to remember every year to go back and go through those, and if we get a few of them, then you know what I'm saying? In other words, you want to be able to say, you want to be able to do what you say.
Right.
So if you say, I'm going to maintain this record on an annual basis, can you do that? Or are you going to, is it possible to get too busy and then say, oh my God, you know what, it's
Well, and
a
I
year and a
think
half,
that
it's
that's
2
one,
years or 3
again,
years?
I think that's another thing too, this is kind of a work in progress. You know, that can always be adjusted in the policy. And,
Yeah.
you know, if it does become too burdensome, my thought was that would definitely take care of if somebody moved. It wouldn't be 3 years that you'd find out and the signs were still up after the 3 years. And to be honest, I don't know if you're going to have that much labor to look at it. You know, it could be nothing more to see if that resident still lives there, see if the conditions are still like that. It's not like it has to come forward and, you know, the review is to make sure that the sign is still needed. It doesn't,
Right.
it's not like we'd say, okay, resident that was approved of this sign, you need to fill out another application and go before the board and get approved for it again.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a review of that
Right.
sign.
It's just a paper review to say it's needed or it's not needed.
Right. And
Yeah.
I guess if you said that you're going to do every year, then that would be, if you do every 3 years, that might be something you say, oh, doggone it, I forgot about that, you know, because it's 3 years out, it might not be on the top of your mind, but if you know it's something that you have to do annually, then that was the thought of why I changed it to a year, so.
And Chief, your intention here is for us to look this over and come back like next meeting, and we'll have our discussion on what we,
Yeah, it's already been approved by council.
It's done.
oh, it's been approved by
Yeah,
council. Oh, I didn't
except for,
understand.
we're waiting to, I was just telling you the things that I kind of revised since the last time I showed this, and it went to
okay.
council again, and I
Okay.
tried to incorporate some things that the council wanted to see changed in it, or at least amended a little bit. There was a little confusion. They thought, I think it was Councilman Albrecht that thought there was confusion with identifying the location of the sign. It was like no more than 150, so I just changed the wording so it was clear, 100 to 150 feet away.
Okay.
And that was in installation. And then application, Mr. Kingsep is working on some kind of a language to add in the application that is going to specify the fact that it's got to be, council was a little concerned that we're going to have a flood of these and they're not really needed. So they wanted to strengthen up. John said that he could come up with some kind of language to accentuate the fact that there has to be a definite proven need for this, and that, you know, and he's also going to work on an ordinance that they're going to adopt, that's going to identify what the role of this board is in determining these signs. So, or at least making that recommendation in the process. So again, it's not put out there until I get that sample back. When I get that from the city attorney, I'll share it with this board get your feedback
So
on
this is
it.
just for our information.
This is just for
tonight.
your information
Okay.
again. So it's another one that's, I put forward here, and it's kind of a work in progress. We're making it there, but it's kind of a,
Can we say completed then, or no?
I don't think it's completed yet. I think it's still working on it. So it's still old business. I'm pretty sure, we're pretty close.
Okay.
So anyhow, that's all I have to report on the special needs signage.
Okay, any other discussion on the special needs signs? Okay, next is new business, item A, Madison and South Custard.
Yeah, I wanted to inform the board, I gave you a copy of a citizen request that we had dealing with the intersection of Madison and South Custer. If you know, I don't know if we can bring it up on that map there so you can see it. It's, yep, there it is right there. It's well, it's not accurately portrayed there.
It isn't?
It isn't accurate.
It shows straight through there. No, wait a minute. Okay, there it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is. I was looking over at Washington.
Yeah, it's off.
It's staggered.
The intersection's off
It's
center.
staggered, and right there, it's currently a two-way stop sign. They stop for, Madison stops for Custer. And the concerned resident reported a bunch of near misses there all the time because there's confusion there at the intersection. The resident requested that we review the possibility of doing what we did over at Washington and Phillips, putting that sign underneath the stop sign that says traffic, reminding them that the cross traffic does not stop, so that they know that they're not assuming that it's a four-way stop. So I had asked Pat to take a look at the intersection and report to us. I don't know if you had gotten a chance to.
I did take a look at the site going out there. I wanted to get counts out there too.
Okay.
I mean, just based on the 10 minutes I sat out there, I mean, it did look like the heavier volume was on Custer as opposed to Madison. I think, again, that it was this morning, I think it was school-driven traffic. But it's a little unusual, you know, the geometry of it to have east-west stop and have north-south go through. Yeah, and what I did see out there this afternoon, I went back through there again this afternoon, there's actually a vehicle parked in the intersection that obstructed your vision if you're going northbound and looking to the right, so
Oops.
might be some,
I was gonna say, can you check the stopping site, or the clear site distance at the intersections while looking at it to see? Because I know I've gone westbound on Madison and tried to look south on Custard, is sometimes
One of
hard.
those intersections when you're going through, you say, kind of like making a left turn from eastbound 14 Mile Road onto northbound Rochester. You know how
Yeah.
you've got that staggering where you're saying, boy, I hope I'm not going to get hit as I'm making this turn.
Yeah.
You know, it's a difficult one to, you know, you just have to be cautious with it. As long as you know it, you can handle it. But that's the way I sensed this intersection there. So my intent was for Pat to kind of look at it and see if he can come up with some recommendations. But the concerned resident says that I don't believe we're going to show a lot of crash history there, but that's something that Pat could.
yeah, what I looked at this morning, there's only one crash there in 3 years, and it really was away from the intersection, somebody backing out of a driveway, but.
Which is, you know, you quite often when you get these, it's, you know, everybody reports these near misses, but you don't have the crash data to show, you know, that there's a real problem there. So, but if there's something that we could do to, my suggestion would be if there's something we can do engineering-wise to make it, you know, in the design of the intersection to make it safer, if that's possible, that would probably be the best route to go.
So what's the problem? If you're driving on Madison and you're driving eastbound?
The residents
or
reporting
westbound?
that the people that are driving on Madison eastbound and westbound are assuming that there's a four-way stop here and that South Custer is going to stop. And South Custer, which is the same complaint, if you remember, we had, and this board looked at Phillips and Washington. That's where it's not a staggered intersection, but that seemed to remedy that. When Pat went out and looked, he said, hey, these signs that say, just a reminder that people that, it's not a four-way stop here. You've got, the other traffic isn't stopping, so be careful. And that
And
seemed
that
to have
worked
helped,
pretty well?
that's helped alleviate the complaints over there at that intersection, so.
And with the intersection being offset, it's somehow hard to see if you're stopped on Madison to be able to see clearly either southbound or northbound, depending on what side of the intersection you're on. And then if a car is possibly parked there too, it could even make it a little bit more difficult.
It almost seems like there's more of a difficulty when you're going westbound on Madison to see the cars that are coming northbound on Custer.
Correct.
It's, I think, because that house is a little closer to the corner. I think it might be a little tighter in that intersection there for vision. But anyhow, that's, the intent was to have Pat look at it, and then we can report back when Pat looked at it, so.
Yeah, and I will look at the site distance. That's usually what we look at, the volume, the site distance, and the crash data, so it'll be in
Okay.
there.
Any other questions for Pat or any discussions on this item? Okay.
That's all I have for new business,
business?
or any business, actually.
Okay. Did you have any new business that you want to bring to the board at all?
Yeah, public comment?
Yes.
Hey, good evening. My name's Matt Cook. I live right down the street here on Fisher Court, 406 Fisher Court. I didn't come here to pat anybody on the back, so I am complaining, but I'm going to be very diplomatic about it tonight. So we live on Fisher Court. We've lived there for about 2 years. Great neighborhood. We've really enjoyed living here, but we had some issues last summer with a lot of people going really fast down Fisher, and I don't have a radar gun, but they're definitely exceeding 25. I mean, probably 35, 40, sometimes 50 miles an hour, really moving down the road. Coincidentally, this happened last year, and it's now happening again. So anybody that's got kids in soccer at Hunter Community Center, I'm just going to call anybody out that's got kids in soccer. It always incidentally happens about a half hour before and after any kind of Saturday soccer games or evening soccer practice. We get a lot of minivans that come through here, people, I guess, running late to games and trying to get out of there early, and it's become a problem to the point where, myself, I know my neighbors, they've gotten so aggravated about it, sometimes you see they put, they've got some orange cones they put out at the street that says slow down. They've got handmade signs. We did talk to the police about it, mention it to them, the police department last summer. They came out there, we did see them issue a couple of tickets, but that's kind of since gone away, so I thought maybe the next step would be this would be a good forum to come voice my concerns about it. But yeah, that's the biggest problem. I would like to see in the future, and I know it's probably a lot more involved than just going and sticking a stop sign out. Obviously, you have to go through some kind of traffic study and be able to justify it, but it would be nice to see another stop sign on the road, because there's not one from Main Street all the way down to the dead end at Hunter Community Center, so we just get people going pretty fast down through there. So.
Didn't we just have?
We put the sign down there, we
Yeah.
put the speed
Yeah.
sign down there, and I'm not sure, was that you?
Or was that on
No,
Lincoln? That was on Lincoln,
That was
wasn't
on-
it?
There's
got
one on
one
there's
on
one on
Fisher Court,
both.
too.
Yeah,
Is there?
yeah. There's one on
The other one to
Lincoln.
Fisher Court.
Yeah, and the one on Fisher, it's good, but it's one of those things that I think people probably get used to, and maybe it's not so effective. And it only works about half the time because it's a solar powered unit, so it sits back there behind. I don't think it looks like it's only solar powered, but it's got a panel on it that
Right.
faces south, and because that's where you get most of the sun. And during the wintertime, it loses power. The battery kind of dies on it. So it doesn't
Okay,
work
we'll
about
have to
half the
check
time.
on that, but.
then I know-
I can tell you that the manual on traffic control devices says that, it even says stop signs are not designed for speed.
Sure.
To deal with speed. In
Okay.
fact, they've had, I've read in different places that they said that you'd actually have an increase in speed because people are PO'd that they're stopping for the stop sign and want to make up for it.
Yeah.
This sounds like it's a directed patrol deal, and that we have to come in there and just saturate it and hammer these people.
Yeah.
And it's probably, once the word of mouth goes out, it sounds like that people, our officers kind of thought that the problem was taken care of. But
Yeah.
it sounds like it isn't. So what we'll do is I'll have some directed patrols go down there
Okay.
and just sit there on see if we can get with the Parks and Rec and find out, their timing of their soccer games. And it sounds like does it also hit with going to the community center for daycare or anything like that too? Or is
Yeah, sometimes. I think that usually, I work from home sometimes, and I've noticed, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, people running in there kind of late. And then, of course, when there was all the construction on 14 in Maine this summer, we got a lot of the spillover traffic, people cutting through around Lincoln and up Boschma and down our street, boogieing down through there. So I was having to, wave people down to slow down, and that was a kind of a mess for a little while. But most of that's gone away since then.
Okay.
Yep, and I just know personally, we used to be at soccer practice at Hunter last year. This year, we're at a larger size soccer field, so you might have a different group of parents going to
Okay,
Hunter
that might need a
Community
little
now. So
more
hence why it
educating.
might have been slowed down for a year, but now seeing pickup because you've got new families or new drivers heading towards that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with something, I think that this is probably an easy fix if it's the soccer players, because I'm telling you, the word's going to
Oh, yeah,
spread.
I'm sure.
With these teams that I just got a ticket down there on the
Yeah.
street, as on my, so then I think that the education might be because it's not a bunch of strangers.
Sure.
They actually have a time to gripe about the ticket while they're standing on the sidelines watching their kids,
Sure.
so.
Okay.
But let's try that.
Yeah, I'm
But
good with that.
if you're seeing it and it continues, let me know. Don't like wait a year or
Yeah,
anything like
for
that.
sure.
Just the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and
Yeah.
if we hear that and I can keep reminding the guys, we can keep them out there until hopefully we can educate as many people as possible and stop
Okay.
the problem for you for a bit.
Okay.
So.
All right. That
It
sounds
sounds
good.
like seasonal, so soccer league is probably ending.
Yeah, I think there must be a spring one and then maybe a fall one again, because it just like 2 weeks ago just started back up, and it's like Saturday mornings and maybe Wednesday evenings or Thursday evenings, I can't remember, is usually when it's the worst. The Saturday mornings is probably the absolute worst. I think everybody, maybe they come from other parts of town or Royal Oak, but they must come up Main Street, and as soon as they hit Fisher, it's just a straight shot.
Yeah, because Fisher is not, I wouldn't
Because
say
it doesn't go all the way through.
Yeah, it doesn't
you
go all the way
wouldn't
through. Like
expect-
Lincoln is
So
a
it
big
is-
one for
Yeah.
a cut through.
And Hendrickson.
And Hendrickson, it's nice straight, you want to talk about straight roads with
Yeah.
no stop signs.
Yeah.
Look at Lincoln, look at Hendrickson.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But, and then, you have to jog down some side streets. So this sounds like it's a destination deal that I think we can pretty easily
Target them.
target them
Yeah.
and get this solved for you.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you for coming.
take care.
Thank you for coming.
Any other new business by the board
No.
to discuss?
Do you have anything to talk about, Pat? or-
Here's your chance.
Be on TV, be a star.
Be a star.
Good. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Have a good evening.